Good evening. We'll call this meeting to order for the Waseca School Board. This is Thursday, January 21st, 2021 at 5:30 p.m. And we are meeting in the Waseca Junior Senior High Performing Arts Center. And we will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, so since we have one of our members tonight, Charlie Preeb, joining us virtually, we'll have to do all of our votes by roll call. So if I forget to say someone's name, please let me know. Can I get a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved. Second.
First and a second, any discussion? All right, hearing none, we'll call for a vote. Edita?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Julie is yes. Katie?
Yes.
Grant?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
And Charlie?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion approved, unanimous. Recognition of tonight's video visitors. Thank you, any of you that are watching at home. As I understand, we did not receive any emails with questions, and there's no one here in the audience who wishes to speak, so we will move on to our payment of claims. And Director Demmel, did you want to make a motion?
Yes, I'll make a motion to pay the payables for the month in the amount of $2,091,413,057 and payroll for $846,570.70.
All right, we have a first. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
First and a second. Any discussion? All right, hearing none, we'll call for a vote. Edita?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Julie is yes. Katie?
Yes.
Grant?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Charlie?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion approved. Motion carries unanimous. Can I get a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda as presented?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. Second.
First and a second, any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for a vote. Edita?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Julie is yes. Katie?
Yes.
Grant?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
And Charlie?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimous. All right, moving on to our information items from our superintendent.
All right, well, good evening. Welcome to January. Feeling more like January today with the wind outside and starting to get cooler here for the next 24 hours or so. Have a pretty good series of information here for you this evening to catch up on some of the things we've been working on operationally. Before I get into that, I do want to just give a quick update that at this time we are staying in that 2 to 5 active cases of COVID-19 in our district at any given time, district-wide. Right now, one student district-wide that we're aware of is actively positive, and a handful of students are quarantined. So we really, since we began the hybrid model here last week, we've been able to maintain that mitigation of what's happening right now in our community. We're starting to see our community numbers also decrease as you're watching the day-to-day information there. And so we are on track, and we're excited that next week our 4th, 5th, and 6th graders will also join the 4-day-a-week schedule. And so now next week, kindergarten through 6th grade will all be on their 4-day-a-week schedule. And Mr. Huttmeyer and the team at WIS have done exceptional work to prepare for that, and I'm looking forward to hearing the successes of having those students there 4 days a week. That will be followed hopefully there shortly into February by our 7th through 12th graders starting to work themselves into 4 days a week as well as we continue to learn more about how we can do that successfully. So that's a little bit of a precursor to the other items here, but I did want to give some update on that. I did film a informational video today, kind of an update that'll go out to parents and staff tomorrow. Kind of just what I just said, reaffirming that we're maintaining where we are, we're doing okay, and we're going to proceed with that plan for next week as we had intended. That's really exciting to see. Our activities are going well. We're not seeing students being quarantined or getting positive in high numbers for our activities. So staff, students, families, great job. I really appreciate that. We'll be able to keep in school here for the duration of the spring and even more. That would be great. So the two key items I want to start with tonight and talk about first is our facilities planning. And I want to give a relatively high-level facilities update tonight, but then also let the board know that our February work session, we're going to go into some greater detail with this in terms of some of the data and some of the numbers we have with regards to financial planning and things like that. So what I want to cover tonight, though, is a little bit of a catch-up on our history lesson, but also what our next steps have been for facility planning. So the last 18 months has been very busy, working through a task force that worked for the entire 2019-20 school year and identifying what our needs were. Worked with Wald and were able to identify the needs assessment for the entire district, going through each of one of our facilities, talking about what the 0 to 2 year needs are, 3 to 5, and 6 to 10 year needs, working through each building and each part of that building. And you were able to receive that report in May of last year, if you recall. They were able to identify some of the LTFM, long-term facility maintenance site needs for all sites. Some activities needs were on that list. But probably what took out the most attention from that whole process is the needs at Hartley Elementary. Knowing that at this point, the maintenance needs of that building are getting to be to the cost level where we need to consider what our next steps are for that building. So the task force identified three primary options. The first to be remodel Hartley where it is, to be able to essentially rebuild it from the inside out, leave the same footprint and work there on that site with that. Option number 2 is to do a standalone elementary building, potentially over there to the west of the WIS building, back behind the WIS building there. And the third option was to put an addition onto our intermediate school to create a K6 or some sort of building with that sort of function. So we went into last summer knowing those were our options. Those were some of the things we needed to think about here in the coming months and now years. And so we've continued that work. We've picked the reins up here this fall. That task force came together again in October and revisited our information we had from earlier this summer to make sure that something hasn't significantly changed in our needs of our buildings. And a couple things have not changed, but have moved faster than we've expected. Our water pipes at Hartley continue to be something that we're working on. As you recall, we had some high lead levels at Hartley here this last summer we discovered, and we're able to do some mitigation strategies with some flushing and some turning off of some faucets to make sure everybody was safe, and everyone has been safe the entire time. That then created the need for a project that we did in December, which was a relatively significant project to mitigate some of that challenges with the lead at Hartley. Well, as we come out of that now, we're learning through some of the testing that did make an impact in some areas, but then it caused some other areas. Now we have to look at that. So we have the chance to inform staff in the last few weeks about where we are with that process, and it's an uncertain process. What I can reassure everybody is that through the flushing, through the turning off of the faucets and the drinking fountains where they need to be, we've got it safe so no one's consuming or being exposed to any unsafe water. But we know that's something that's not going to be a sustainable thing. We're going to have to fix those pipes, and we're going to have to then think about what the building needs look like going forward. So we have to be open and honest about that's going to be a need to address at Hartley. We also just did use that time this last fall to install some air purification units. So they're in and operational now at Hartley. And so we have some enhancement to our HVAC system through that purification system. And that came just, and Elizabeth can help me with this if we have questions about it, but it became a time to do it because the contractor was available, the building was available, and we were able to do it at this time. And that gets into our LTFM plan that was part of the task force work going forward. Part of that 0 to 2 year immediate need, so we're working into that. None of that, unfortunately, was a surprise, but we knew we had to do it and move forward with that. The other thing that's happened in the last few weeks, in the last 6 to 8 weeks, we had a task force come together and look at grade level configurations, looking at research about what does the best grade level alignment look like for schools in terms of which grades are together in the buildings, where the transitions are. And as we look at what all of our options are, is there an advantage? Well, the task force found that really it's more about the programming in the building, not necessarily what grade level you put in the building. A couple of priorities we did find was that it did become very evident that transitions are challenging for students. And so the more transitions you create from student moving from building to building can sometimes cause students to have a little bit of a lapse to start their new building, and then they usually work their way back up, but it's a bump in the road. We also came to the conclusion that pre-K and K, kindergarten in the same building, could be a significant advantage for those programs and students. We've also been talking about that with the Finance Committee the last several months about what our options could be. Working with Ellers, our financial consultant, about how do we fund something of this nature, coming down to the point for whether we have options of alternative facility bonds or bond referendums or LTFM and whatever our debt structure looks like. So a lot of behind the scenes work happening in the last several months to provide the board here in the next few months now coming forward, here's some options to consider about our next steps. And so that's really what it brings me to current time and what our next steps are. And our next steps are going to be to determine our goal timeline. What's our objective for facility improvements? And specifically, our most immediate need is, what are we going to do with Hartley in terms of that particular site? That's been an exceptional building for us that has done a lot of great things and have a lot of great memories, and people have gone through that school that remember it fondly. And now we have to decide what the next steps are, whether it's remodel, whether it's build new, and that's not the end is not determined in that. We have some end in mind, knowing that we can't keep our current building the way it is, but we have other options to move forward. In working with our financial consultants, it does look like for a dollar value of that, which would be in the 20s, 25 million or so, if we were to build a new building. It could be just under 20 million if we were to do an addition. That, of course, will ebb and flow as we create our design. A bond referendum looks like the most relevant way to meet those financial needs. So we know that right now we're in the middle of a pandemic, and we're in the middle of a school district working through a school year that looks like something we're not used to. And so we know now's not the time to go out and start asking those questions and think about that. But we do need, as a board and as a district, to start thinking about, so what is our goal? We have to start planning for when we come out of this. So we know that better days are ahead. And we know that from the vaccine implementation, from the way we've been getting used to our masks and being smart with mitigation strategies, seeing the numbers go down, that there's going to be a day after this for Waseca Public Schools. And so we need to start planning for when we have to do that build. And what are we going to build? What are we going to do when that comes time to do that? So what I would like the board to start considering over the next several weeks is think about a goal date. I think we could realistically start thinking about November of 2022 as potentially a date to ask that question of our community, which gives us lots of time to start thinking about whether that's the right time and see what our community feels about that and give the appropriate information. What I would like to do is, now at our work session coming up here in 2 weeks, really take a look at numbers and data together in a work session format before we have any more detailed conversation about that. I just wanted to right now have the board start to think about that potential goal. We have until next calendar, so into 2022, before we actually have to make a decision. This is going to be on the ballot on a specific date. So right now it's more of an informal, yes, let's start working towards that maybe in the next month or two the board would be able to make a decision to help us start thinking about that direction. Assuming that's what we choose to go with, which we'll see if it's for the sake of tonight's information. I'll talk about next steps after that. We would then assemble a new task force here coming up this summer and fall to start thinking about including more community and staff representation. Our task force that met in 2019-20 met the needs of what we needed to at that time and had a lot of excellent input from a lot of people. The next step is to broaden that circle and to bring more of the community involved in that conversation and more of our staff involved in that conversation and think about what our options could be. We'll also work in the next 6 weeks and Elizabeth and Colin Green are working with us on that to identify the short-term needs at all the sites that LTFM will be able to address. And what will LTFM not be able to address? So if you recall, as part of the task force work last year, Wold provided us that thick report of the 0 to 10 year needs for every single building. And right now we're looking at the analysis of how much of that is in our LTFM plan and how much of that doesn't fit, so that we have to know what our other options are. We also know that we need, our community feedback is very important. So right now I'm thinking about this fall, or potentially heading into early winter, getting some feedback from the community about how they're feeling about some potential building changes going forward. Heading into then this time of 2022, really feeling comfortable with, here's what we're going to be proposing to our community potentially, based on the options that we create over the next 11 months, really, with that. So the purpose of tonight's update is to kind of give that thorough 18-month history of back, 1920 to now, and then help the board kind of start wrapping your heads back around, really, I think in the next 6 to 8 weeks or so, we probably should determine an informal go date that we want to work towards, and then we'll do the work, and then we'll get our feedback from our community. We'll see how things ebb and flow, and we can decide to change that, because we don't have to make a declaration until next year. But I think it's time to, just like anything, I guess for myself, I should speak to my own personal way of doing work. Once we have a goal date in mind, then I can back map that all the way back to now, and we can really make sure that we're following the steps to include everyone in the conversation, and really give ourselves lots of time to be inclusive in the process. So I felt it was pertinent to have that conversation now. It also feels good to be talking about something post-pandemic, which is really exciting for me to think about what we're accomplishing as a school district. And I would stop there for tonight and see what questions the board had before I move on to the next part.
When you just said the goal date, I thought you said November 22. Is there the goal date, or do we need to discuss more, or?
That's just a date he's throwing out there.
That's a date that I'm proposing for the board to consider. And then I think we don't have to declare that formally until, at the very latest, August of 2022. So we have some time to then decide as a team if that's really where we want to go with that. But if we are to informally say, yes, that seems reasonable over the next few weeks, that allows us to work together to kind of map up our next 18 months so we can work towards that goal.
And that's the midterm elections also, right?
Correct.
How much we have opportunity to move, 2022, 2023, or?
We can move that however we'd like. I think what we have to consider is any delay we do in that particular question, it adds more to our long-term maintenance plan or our short-term maintenance, I should say, of Hartley Elementary, which I'll bring some data to our work
that
session,
would be nice.
so we can really start thinking about that.
Yeah, thank you.
Other questions about the facility part of his update? Charlie, do you have any questions, or? Charlie, did you have any question about the facility update?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So then I also wanted to spend some time talking about the strategic plan this evening, because we have been talking as a district leadership team the last several weeks about our strategic plan and what our plan on the plan is for the next really second half of this school year, because we all know that the first half of the school year was working through coronavirus and some pandemic planning, and it changed the way we focused our work a little bit, combined with just a new superintendent learning some of the culture and getting to know some of the individuals involved in our district. So we have had some time to focus more on the strategic plan of late, and I want to run through our key areas and talk to the board about what I think the spring pertinent next steps are for the strategic plan. So in this area of student achievement, we are waiting to hear the requirements for spring testing. Right now, we do know that, to the best of our knowledge, MCAs are going to be expected, and all of our testing is going to be expected. At the last year, the waiver was granted from the federal government that states could apply for the waiver and not give those state assessments. To this moment, we have not been given that option to apply for any waivers. And with the incoming administration in Washington, I don't know if that'll change or not. We'll keep an eye on that. But as of right now, everything we know is that we'll be taking those assessments here this spring. We already did get word that the access test, which is our EL assessment, has been pushed back until later in the spring. It usually starts around February, but now in April, going to be this year. So that could be the sign of things to come about some things moving forward, about some changes. We'll have to just take that as we go here the next few weeks. Also in the area of student achievement, and I think I mentioned this in a prior update, a weekly update, the high school has had conversations about Latin honors and how we honor students upon graduation. And I just wanted to give some more information around that. And then I'll have Dr. Miller come and share with you here in an upcoming meeting how that potentially could look when we get ready to finalize that conversation. But one of the questions that came up is how it changes the number of students that get honored or recognized at a graduation. And so what I was able to get from Dr. Miller was, so everybody with a 3.0 GPA or higher are considered honor students, and they wear the gold cord at the graduation. Of those 3.0 and higher honor students, 10 of them are listed in the program as top 10 based on class rank, and then we recognize one valedictorian with a medal at the ceremony. And so last year that involved 62 honor students, and 11 got recognized with something different beyond that. And so if we were to go to the Latin honor system, we're using the current GPA of our seniors based on this, current 2021 graduating class GPAs, we'd be looking at 92 honor students. So, 30 more students in the 3.0 or higher than last year, which even if we kept the system the same, that would be 92 honor students. The difference would be we would have 16 students with 4.0 or higher GPA, 32 of summa cum laude, 12 magna cum laude students, and 27 cum laude students, meaning we would recognize 71 distinct Latin honor students in addition to them being honor students versus, the top 10 or one valedictorian. So, Dr. Miller and his leadership team have discussed this at significant length, and so I want him to be able to come and share that with you at an upcoming meeting, but I wanted to answer that question here today. I knew my update would be plenty long tonight, so I wanted to do that. So, and I can certainly answer questions about that as we get towards the end here. In the area of student support, we're continuing to work hard on making sure that we're accessible to students and families. Our counselors, our social workers, our problem-solving teams are meeting weekly, doing everything we can to reach out to families. Having all of our students back in hybrid significantly helps. And now next week, even going to 4 days a week for more of our students is going to significantly help that. But I think that the mental health needs of our students, just the emotional stress of our students of trying to navigate a constant world of change, our staff is doing an exceptional job, and we've heard about that earlier in the school year with that. Summer programming. We're starting to talk about that. We have a meeting coming up next week with our principals about what this summer will look like. And we are basically starting with the narrative that this is going to be a much more enhanced, robust, comprehensive summer programming going forward than the traditional summer school that we have had. I can't speak to what that looks like yet. I can just give a taste of, we want to make sure that as many students as want to potentially have the option for some summer programming. We obviously can't commit to that right this moment, but that's going to be our goal, is how can we get more students engaged. And as I mentioned, I think in the last week's update, the most recent round of stimulus money, some of these ESSER 2 funds are specifically can be used for some summer programming. And the district is going to receive, estimated around $900,000 for that particular round of funding, which one of the things that we've talked about as a leadership team is utilizing some of that towards our summer programming to be able to make sure that students have options. And if students choose not to need that this summer, then we can take that conversation as it goes. Again, we're so early in the development process that I don't have more details with you than that, other than it's on our mind. And we know summer has to look probably a little more robust this year than it has in some years past. Monday distance learning is an exciting opportunity for us. As I mentioned, I think in a previous conversation, we do have 2 substitute interns starting with us here, coming up as soon as they're both licensed with that in the next few weeks. And then they will be working as a staff member, as a sub at our they both happen to be, our candidates both happen to be elementary people. So one will be at Hartley, one will be at intermediate school. But they also will be serving at childcare on Mondays, helping those students with their distance learning work on that given day. So our kindergarten through 6th grade students who are choosing to access school-age care on Monday will have a licensed teacher for an hour of the day or so for each grade level to have access to a teacher to help them with their distance learning. 2 hours a day for the older kids working through that way. So I feel good about that, to be able to give them some support in that regard. In the workforce piece, I just mentioned substitute interns, which is very exciting. We're also preparing, and the Finance Committee got an update on this about an hour and a half ago, preparing for what does staffing look like and budgeting look like for the upcoming school year. Now we're looking at 21-22, and how does that budget look? And it's a negotiations year, so we know we have to start building our budget around some assumptions, which the legislature will give us some more of that in the coming weeks. We're early in that process too, but those are things we're thinking of going forward. Community engagement's been something that I've been having I'm enjoying working through some of that in the last few weeks as we've had some time to transition back out of distance learning and out of a high rate at case rate for the pandemic. Last Friday, we held our first coffee with a superintendent opportunity. That was at 9 o'clock on last Friday morning. Although it ended up being a snow day, but I was here to talk to whoever wanted to talk, and we did have a few individuals log on and have some conversation. It was a very valuable conversation, and able to answer those questions that we take note of, and we can have to communicate better, and we'll do that monthly here going forward. Hopefully, by the time we get to February and March, we can start having those out in the community. I have to do them all over Zoom, but we'll see if we're going with that. We're also working on a monthly column with the Waseca County News. So you'll be seeing that coming up monthly. We've been doing that for the last several months, and that's been an excellent way to get communication out to our community. And then probably the most exciting district-wide, I think, is, and this I mentioned this in the update yesterday as well, Dr. Miller and Jake Hager and I had the opportunity to attend last Wednesday a meeting with local business partners from around Waseca and the Waseca area and Riverland College, and talking about how we can provide partnership and pathway opportunities for our students to be prepared to work for our employers in town. And so what Riverland's going to consider doing for these businesses is meet and talk about some needs assessment, what it is that they need for their employees, what technical skills and what opportunities do they need to have, which then we can take as feedback and create programming to help support our community employers with our students who are graduating here from Waseca High School. So that was an exciting partnership. I also, a little bit from a school district direct gain perspective too, was thinking about how we can come and maybe potentially train some of our teachers who we may need an additional teacher in a career and technical education pathway. I don't have a licensed teacher for it, but there might be a cohort they can get in through this Riverland grant program to get that licensure or become certified so we can get that licensure. So I think it could be an excellent partnership moving forward with that. Academic programming, the most interesting thing I think happening right now, thanks to Brooke McGuire and Clint Link and their partnership with the South Central Service Cooperative, is providing some, I think it's weekly at this point, professional development for staff in the area of everything from hybrid learning to virtual learning to mental health to how are they working through things. And we're going to have some of that culminate in our March professional development day with that. So opportunities for staff to be looking at how to get better, more professional development. I think the last update is teaching and learning, and that's really looking hard at our assessment and grading practices right now. And particularly, I know I mentioned this in a couple different updates, looking at how students have been performing this school year, and particularly at our high school and junior high level. And if we're failing a class, are they failing a class because they're not attending? Are they failing because they're not engaged? Or they're attending but they're not engaging? What support do they continue to need? So, and then how does how does grading for mastery look versus grading for compliance? Those are some things that we're starting to have those conversations about bit by bit as we start thinking about what we could do going forward to support our students in their learning. The last thing I would mention about the strategic plan is that what I'm excited about the strategic plan, and I'm excited to get back into this spring talking more about teaching and learning. I think I mentioned this in the county news a few weeks ago. Our focus has been so much about pandemic that we need to really be intentional as district leaders to take that conversation back to teaching and learning, even more than it has. We have the whole time, but more this spring. So the intent for the strategic plan, one thing I'm thinking of right now is, as we get through this year, we get through our data, I can't speak to what has happened in the past, so we'll have to talk more about that as to what you're used to, but what I would love to see is essentially our June work session dedicated to the strategic plan update. And what I mean by that is all the data, what we have for the year, here's what we came up doing, and basically a deep dive as a board with our district leadership team and where the strategic plan is at. I'm also developing right now with our district leaders a 3-year operational plan, so that when we get to that June meeting, we have the opportunity to say, okay, here we are in June of 21. Here's what June of 22, June of 23, and June of 24 incrementally should look like to goals, so that when we get to the June of 2024, we've met as many of our goals in our strategic plan as we possibly can. So right now we're working towards that, but it probably is more for my visual and my mapping preference to put together a 3-year operational plan to be able to meet those needs. And so I anticipate the June work session being, for me, a very interesting session about strategic planning based on this year where we are, but also the next 3 years as we finish the back end of this current strategic plan. So that's what I have for this evening for you. Any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
I have a couple of questions, but I can wait till if anyone else has questions. But for the Latin honors option, has this been discussed with students also?
I don't know the answer to that.
Do you know?
I know I talked about it. I really like the idea of it because I don't, so how you talked about how there's 13 or so kids over 4.0. So then you get that over 4.0 by taking your AP classes, but then if you take more classes like band and choir, your grade drops lower. So I think not having it encourages kids to fill their schedule more with different electives. So I like the idea of it.
Cool. I'm glad that it is being discussed, because I'll probably ask Dr. Miller about this as well when he comes, but I'd be concerned about making this change this year and just blindside students all of a sudden with the change. But if there is conversations going on, then that's good to know. So, yeah. My other questions kind of go back to the learning model update that you began with. And I'm just wondering if you can just kind of briefly share for the board kind of what, I have a couple things, what 4 days a week is the plan is to look like at WIS. And then can you also explain a little bit more about what synchronized learning is going to look like for the high school? Because I think all I've seen so far is just a date when it begins, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that's wondering.
Yeah, so I'll start with that one, because that one's really the more of the nuts and bolts piece. So as we transition and looking at how do we move to a 4-day-a-week schedule at our junior, senior high school, we're going to be looking at early February, moving to what we call synchronous learning. That's a buzz term. But what it means is that when students are on their hybrid day, they'll have the opportunity to be joining their class virtually. And so the teachers really can work through a 4-day, a 5-day, including their distance learning day, succession with students. And we know that sitting in front of the computer all day, logging on to every single hour for weeks upon weeks is not what we would prefer to have our students doing. So in our conversations with Dr. Miller and I that I've had this conversation so far, I know it's still a little bit of a work in progress, which is why the communication has not been 100% out there yet. But the intent is really to help with that transition to then a 4-day schedule that then works pretty smoothly then when those students come back to 4 days a week. So I anticipate it potentially being something that happens for just a few weeks for some students, because I personally, and I think I get feedback from students on that yes, you're occupied all day being on a computer, but it's not always the best for you to be logging in every day. For 2 or 3 or 4 weeks while you transition into a 4-day-a-week model, that's going to be okay. But it essentially is going to be able to log in for part or all of the hour when you're on your virtual day.
So we do not envision this being a long-term solution. It's just to get everyone kind of on the same schedule and then ready to come in 4 days.
That's what I see as the benefit. And I don't 100% can't speak for Dr. Miller and his leadership team's conversations about that, but I understand that being a huge benefit to us because we do have it in mind that we're going to be trying to move to 4 days a week with our junior, senior high school students as soon as is reasonable.
Cool.
So
Good. Thank you.
That's good. And then to answer to your question about WIS, and so that'll look like more of the in-person model based on what the governor has allowed us to do. We don't have the space or the staff to really keep it as a full 50% capacity hybrid model. So we will be focusing on 3 feet of distance for those students, which is what the new guidance allows us to do for the in-person model. And we do have some additional teachers, our substitute intern. Mr. Hutmeyer did move some staff to a few different spots to be able to keep class sizes down. There are a handful of students that had to move some classrooms, just like we did at Hartley, to be able to get everybody with a teacher throughout the course of the day. But I was over there today, and they've got more lunchroom tables set out to be able to spread the kids out. They've got, transitions set up in terms of the hallway going. So it'll look closer to in-person learning in terms of spacing and such, but it'll still be as spaced out as we possibly can be with the intent to stay hybrid in as many concepts as we possibly can with that. Buses will be a little bit more. They'll have a few more students on the buses. They'll still space them out, but again, with an in-person model, we're able to do that, to be able to have a few more kids on the buses. We've still encouraged our families to drive if they can for this very moment. I'm working through that, but it's going to look a lot like Hartley with just a few more students in each classroom.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that. So.
Yeah, and I think we gave ourselves enough time to prepare for the correct way. When I was over at the building today, there was many positive comments. Staff's excited to have the kids back.
Good.
All 4 days. I mean, they already are excited to have them there, but and I think it does open up the opportunity to see how that goes for a week or two, and then make a move on some of our other upper grades as well.
Cool. Awesome.
May I ask a question back to the transition model? Can you just provide a little bit more details? What would be difference to why we need transition to 4 days? What would be different the 4 days to comparing to normal, go to back normal? Why we needed to do transition? Why
we're doing 4 days and not 5 days.
Oh, it's not really, but why we need transition? Kids can go back to school and just, go back to 4 days. I'm just missing the point why they need to have transition. What are they going to do through the transition?
I think the point is that we want to get kids moving back to 4 days a week, and we know we have to wait a few more weeks based on what we're seeing right now. And so if we can get them there virtually 4 days a week, then that just allows that transition to happen a little quicker.
But aren't they now 4 days a week because they still need to do every day there's assignments?
They do their assignments, but they're not virtually, and they don't necessarily need to log into every class every day. And so trying to get into more of that routine. It's something to try based on the feedback we got from parents about wanting kids to engage more. So it's an opportunity to give something different to try. Yeah. I don't know that I disagree with you as a necessary for the transition, but it's something that potentially could enhance us for a few weeks. Yeah.
Thank you.
Is really the difference asynchronous versus synchronous?
That's the
only
difference.
change.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have to admit that it continues to be a work in progress. So I have to connect with Dr. Miller on how they're going to keep track of that, what the attendance looks like. I don't know the answer to that yet. I know it's still being worked on.
To that, my son came home because some of the teachers have been talking about that, and I thought he would have complained about this, and he's actually looking forward to logging in and doing work at the same time as everyone else is doing work. So for him, I think his brain just is excited to do stuff at the same time as everyone else is doing it. So I really thought, I know he likes the flexibility of our distance learning days, but he's actually looking forward to being in school, whether he's at home or at school, at the same time as everyone else. So we'll see how he feels after the first few days, but yeah.
Right. Well, and that's what we're going to have to do, see how it goes after the first
Yeah.
attempt.
Any other questions for Eric before we continue?
Just one more. What are the teachers saying about it? How are they going to be ready to do, this work in a class, to be online and teaching, live?
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do with the technology that they have available to them. And are they able to essentially teach and still have students be able to get involved in that? And from what I've been hearing, it's been some mixed reception in terms of whether or not and mostly about just how's that going to logistically work, exactly like you mentioned. And so I think it's been met with mostly positive results in terms of, yes, I think we need to do this, but we're still working through how it's going to look for every single teacher. So, yeah. I think that's a very real question, yeah.
Charlie, do you have any questions for Eric before we move on?
Oh, no, I don't.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, moving on then to our financial report from Elizabeth.
Good evening, board. In our packet, as normal, we have our monthly comparison for expenditures and revenues. And coming up to mid-year, we're looking at December of last year, December of 19 to December of 20. Some things I wanted to point out, if you caught it or not, you're going to see the effects of the CRF funding on both the expenditure side and the revenue side, especially in that December report. So if you look at the expenditures on the December report, our equipment expenditures compared to prior years, and especially if you look at the graph when you're looking at the past two prior years, our expenditures are quite accelerated in December. A large part of that is because of our CRF funding. We were able to invest in some technology that Mr. Hudspeth had mentioned earlier, so some of the smart panels, as well as some custodial equipment that we were able to purchase using the CRF funds, which had to be done by December 31st. So the expenditure side looks a little heavy, but as in kind of comparison, then when you look at the revenue reports, our federal aids that we're receiving at that same time, those are a lot more accelerated than prior years as well, is because then we're able to claim those much quicker. So some of that is still coming in yet in January, but I just wanted to explain some of those discrepancies, or at least just point out that there are going to be some fluctuations, especially due to the additional funding, which we are extremely grateful for. This kind of coincides with the information that we were talking about with the Finance Committee today of just kind of what is our budgeting process. So when we budget, we always have to set a budget in June because our business year starts July 1. At that time, there's still some unknowns, or we're making a lot of estimations. At this point in time, we're taking that look, and we're using these reports that you are looking at as well, and saying, okay, what were we, how did we come out with our estimations? And at that time, we didn't know about the CRF funding. So this is a prime opportunity for us to take a look at our budget. Where can we tighten those things up? So now we can budget appropriately for expenditures, as well as account for the revenues that come with it. So when you're looking at comparisons of this year versus the prior year, please do take that into consideration, that our prior year is our final budget. Especially now through probably March, we're looking at a preliminary budget versus a final budget. So there will be some variations along the way. And again, this is a tool that we use to help us account for any of those discrepancies or swings that we maybe did not anticipate. And now we're taking this time to really tighten the budget up now that we've been through half of a year. I'm going to pause for just a minute on expenditures and revenues and see if that makes sense, or if you have any other questions that might come along with that. Okay. We also have the monthly enrollment in there, and though we are down a little bit from what we had anticipated, it's following the same trend that it has in prior years. So actually, this is normal from what we're seeing, and we'll be using that information to help us build and continue to update the budget of the current year. And as Mr. Hudspeth said again prior, we're also looking at what does that now do for our 21-22 budget that we're going to start looking at. How does that staffing, and again, contract negotiations that will be coming up as well. The only other things I just wanted to mention and point out, legislative session obviously has started, so those are, we're going to be keeping an eye on any of the bills or potential language that may be coming through. We as an organization, I'm a part of MASBO, Minnesota Association of School Business Officials. We'll have a meeting every other week just on a legislative update. Things to keep us aware of, maybe things that we should be reaching out to our representatives regarding. And so if there's anything of significance, I will make sure that I reach out with you as well. And I think we also obviously have legislative committee. You as board members are part of that. So that's a good time for us to collaborate. And again, just really tell our story of, how have things been impacting the district and really advocating for school districts across Minnesota. The other thing that I wanted to point out, and we can definitely talk about this more as it comes later in the agenda, is our pay equity report. And this, I wanted to explain just a little bit more of the narrative piece behind that. So this is a requirement for school districts or public entities for every 3 years. And January of 21 is our year that we need to report. It's a snapshot in time, so it's information as of December 31st of 2020. And what this does, it just helps public entities look at compensation based on gender. It doesn't forgo or have us forgo any collectively bargained agreements. That still is part of the process. This just helps us evaluate, are we in compliance regarding gender-based pay? That's the only thing that it's looking at. And so as you can see in the board agenda as well, I tried to put little notes on the different tests that we need to pass to be able to be in compliance with this. And we have been able to pass every single test regarding pay equity. If you have any specific questions, I'm happy to talk about that. And then after it is board approved, I'll go ahead and submit that to the state of Minnesota. And then we'll also post that we have submitted it. And then once Minnesota Management and Budget has taken a look at that and reviewed the information that we've submitted to them, they will then let us know if they also agree that we are in compliance, and then we'll make sure that that's posted throughout the district and made aware that that report is available should people want to review that. Any other questions at this time?
On the pay equity, I find it really interesting, all the categories, I guess. But just sitting here listening to you talk about it, I also feel like it'd be kind of cool to have seen the one from 3 years ago. Just off the top of your head, do you know, are we roughly in about the same percentage in that report as we are now? Or have we changed anything significantly?
Oh, and absolutely, and we can. I can absolutely share any prior reports. That's public, not our public information. So anybody can report those, ask for those reports at any time. This one was a little tighter, only because we've done some contract negotiation changes. The main driver for that, there's one test that you have to pass, and it looks at how long does it take a male gender category to get to their highest earning versus a female gender category to their highest earning. When we've been negotiating with our teacher union, the goal has always been to try to work to compress the schedule. There used to be, I think, 26 steps on that schedule. Now it's down to 20. So every time we shorten that schedule, some of those pay categories or those job categories now, basically it's 19 years you'd get to top pay in a teacher category. Some of our other bargaining groups have to wait still. Their category still goes through step 26. So those are some things that may throw it off or just change the percentage. Again, we're still within the required percentage, so we're still in compliance. But every time you do negotiate, those are some things to take into consideration of, will this affect our pay equity?
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I might ask, I'll probably send you an email. I'm just curious what the previous one was, because it was really interesting to read through. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Any other questions for Elizabeth? Okay. We will move on then. Thank you, Elizabeth. We will move on then to our committee and board member reports. Megan, do you want to share what's going on at the school lately?
We have Snow Week coming up,
Oh, yeah.
so we have a student council meeting tomorrow to discuss that and a couple other things. And then we decided on like our class motto and stuff, so just normal school, I guess, as normal as can be.
Right. Did it feel good to be back in school for a couple days?
Yeah, so I actually I'm Thursday, Friday, but then I have several AP classes, so I'm here for most of the day,
Oh.
Tuesday, Wednesday. So it's nice that we're able to come in for those classes.
Yeah, that would be a change from the previous hybrid that we did. So that's good to hear that. So
Yep.
I'm glad that that's working. Cool. Thank you. Adita, do you have anything to share?
No, I don't have any.
Okay. Scott?
Pretty much for the only finance committee was the only one that I was on, and I believe Eric handled most of that already.
Okay. The only committee really I have to talk about would be, I did sit in on the legislative update last week or last Friday. Grant, were you able to sit in on that also? Okay, I'm glad I was able to sit in then. And it was super informative, and they plan to do this every week. So I don't know if I'll make it. Don't know if I'll be able to sign in every week, but definitely the big picture. We were able to eliminate our deficit, which was a concern a year ago or last spring, and we do have a surplus, but at the same time, we have no idea what, once everything is done, how much surplus there really will be to go around. And so the usual, I believe MSBA is advocating for 2% and 2% for the increase for the next 2 years. So that's been pretty standard the last several years. So they're going to continue that. Their focuses are K-12 finance, safe schools planning, getting back into the classroom, equalization of the tax levy. And she spent quite a bit of time talking about the ESSER 1 and 2 funds. And so we'll hear more about that. So we'll see what else is coming. And then, have you guys been going to the MSBA stuff the last couple weeks, or yeah? Today I was only able to listen to the Minnesota State High School League, but last week I listened to pretty much everything. The keynote speaker was all about racism and equity, and so that was very timely for the board goal this year. So I enjoyed listening to her talk. That was fun. And then one of the roundtables I was able to listen to was about, it was titled Inclusion in the Palm of Your Hand, and was totally not what I was expecting it to be about, but it was about careers in construction and trades. And there is a construction trades mobile app that can be used to educate youth, parents, and teachers about apprenticeships and trades careers, and it can connect youth to statewide apprenticeships, which I thought was really interesting. So definitely a tool that I think the school could easily make use of. So, and I believe it's a free app to download, so it sounds really neat. So, and then today, listening to the Minnesota State High School League, the one thing I was interested in hearing about is, and he did answer this question, will the requirement of wearing masks be lifted for practices and games? And the goal of the Minnesota Department of Education and the Department of Health and the Minnesota State High School League is to get kids back into the classroom. That's their number one goal. And so because of that, he does not see masks being lifted because their goal is to get kids back in the classroom, and they don't want to jeopardize that. So be patient, keep wearing those masks is basically the message that I walked away with. So that's what I have. So Katie.
Mine, I just had the professional growth and development, the last one, and they were talking about the training that'll be coming up in the next couple of months and how that's going to be restructured, how last year it was so successful with teachers being able to pick and choose what they wanted, but now this year, how are they going to set that up, and how are they going to implement it being online, things like that. So that is in the planning. And then finance, and then policy, we just set up kind of our schedule for how we're going to be doing the year with that one.
Nice.
And then I had sat in on a roundtable today, and it had to do with how freedom of speech with students can be addressed.
Yeah.
And that was kind of interesting because you've got the clothing items, you've got, can people come in with trucks and flags being in the parking lot, and how you can say, well, you know, can you limit their freedom of speech? Can you not do that? So that was very interesting.
Yeah, I
to,
plan to listen to that one, yeah.
Yeah, he was good. I could listen all day to that guy. He
Oh,
was
good.
really, really nice. And then the other one was just data analytics, how you can use the information that you're gathering either from testing or from payroll to see if you can match up time cards, to see if there's ever concerns, how booster programs in the past, some schools have had issues where's the money going, and you can do a lot with data analytics.
Yes.
So, and then the other one was, I don't remember, I only did half of the other one, so I didn't. But next week looks like a lot of good topics.
Yeah, definitely. I appreciate, though, that MSBA is putting all the recordings online, so if you, like, my morning was too busy today to log in live, but I'm glad I can catch them later, so, yeah, I definitely wanted to do the freedom of speech on that one.
That's a good one.
Yeah, that was really interesting. The topic was interesting.
And we've had some of those issues here even.
Yeah, well, and it goes to your policy committee also, it always comes back to policy, so, cool. Grant?
The only committees I was part of have already been covered.
All right, thank you. Dave?
Same. I think everything's been covered.
Thank you. Charlie?
I have nothing.
All right, thank you. Recognitions and positive board feedback. Charlie, how about I start with you?
I have nothing there. I've been gone since the last board meeting, so I have not attended any other meetings, so.
Just rub it in, Charlie, so. I'm just kidding.
Great.
All right, thank you. Dave, do you have any recognitions?
Yes, I have one. I'd like to recognize Savannah Zippel, our high school ag teacher. She applied for and she won a $5,000 grant to do some curriculum work, ag science education, particularly in the area of animal science. And there were only 38 of these grants awarded nationally, and she got one of them. So
Yeah.
I would like to congratulate her on that,
Yeah.
and her students.
Yeah, that's a cool grant, and definitely her plans for her program are awesome, so, yeah. Grant, do you have anyone or anything you want to recognize?
Yeah, I'll add two. There was two Excel Award winners. The Excel Award is for juniors statewide, honored by the Minnesota State High School League for academic and community involvement leadership, and Eliza Sankovitz and Isaac Potter were listed. So
Yep.
it's good to see our students honored. It seems like that happens a lot. I think our students are exceptional. The other thing I guess I want to say is I think from the report Eric had given, our students and our teachers and our staff is doing very well at doing all the things we need to keep the pandemic under control, and that's evidenced by the fact that we only have one case, the fact that we're able to get kids back in school, and also, I guess, thank the community because our community numbers are going where we need to. And those are the things we have to do to get the kids back in school. So thank you to everybody for doing the things to keep us safe and keep our numbers down.
Yeah, definitely. Katie?
I was able to watch the choir concert online, the December-wary holiday program. It was really cute. The kids sounded really good, so if you get a chance to listen to that, that would be good. And then they have their burger fry for the choirs tomorrow down at the Sal at the, which one is that, the Legion?
The Legion, yep.
Yeah, at 5:30 to 8.
Yeah. I have not watched the choir concert, and I have a choir student sitting right there, so.
They sounded really nice.
Yes, I need to get to that, yeah. Cool. I just wanted to commend, Hartley and now WIS for all the work that they're doing to get their kids back in 4 days a week. I know it's not easy to think of how can we have everyone there and still maintaining some level of social distance and following guidelines, and I know there's a lot of work that goes into that, so I commend them for that. And then just something outside of the school district, I just wanted to highlight our library here in town and their activity kits that you can check out. I know they have you can check out snowshoes and they have other things, but this week they posted you could check out a classic Nintendo, and I'm kind of tempted to check that one out.
Yeah.
But I just love that they have the programs that they're still putting on in the midst of a pandemic. I think are pretty impressive, and our library does an outstanding job. So anyway, that's what I have.
The only thing I have is that I think it's cool that we're putting on online all of our sporting events.
Yeah.
And you're able to go out and check them out. I think that's pretty cool, and it's everybody gets to see what our students are actually doing.
Yeah, that's a good
So-
point.
It's nice because the community members then are posting scores online. So if you
Yes,
can't quite hear
yes.
that, then it's just like you're at a game and you just didn't get to go that night.
Yep.
So
No, it is nice.
it's fun.
Yeah. Adita.
I think everything what I wanted to say was said.
I'll start with you first next time.
That's fine.
Thank you. Megan, anything else you want to add tonight?
Just kind of like what Miss Youngberg said about the concert. That was really nice to have that. And then also, I know all of our teachers are, going the extra mile to do stuff, but, I just want to say, a special shout out to, our band and choir teachers, because the amount of flexibility that they show, we're in a different room every day trying to adjust to everything happening. And, I mean, it's great. And, I mean, for a band, he's having lessons the entire day, Google Meets and all this stuff, and it's good to have that sense of normalness.
Yeah.
So.
So is that what all the instruments are for? Is for
Yeah, we're in
All right.
here, and then we're in the choir room. And
Nice.
everything.
Very nice. All right, are we ready to move on to our action items? All right, we just have a few items tonight, so we'll begin with, can I get a motion to approve our received gifts and donations?
So moved.
Second.
First and a second. Any discussion?
No, thank you. Those
Yeah.
are awesome.
Yeah, really generous. A total of $7,813.80 donated this last month, or recognized for donations. So that's really cool. Well, yeah, $4,000 just to the Hartley Music Department. That's really cool. Jeez.
Plus the other one, that's 68 for the Hartley Music.
Oh yeah, sorry. My goodness, what are they doing to the music department over there? That's really cool. Yeah. All right, if there's no further discussion, I will call for a vote. Adita,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Julie is yes, Katie,
Yes.
Grant,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
and Charlie.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion is approved, or motion carries unanimous. Can I get a motion to approve the paraprofessional letter of agreement?
I'll
So
make,
moved.
whoops, go ahead.
Yeah.
We have a first from Grant, and we have a second from Katie. All right, we have a first and a second. Any discussion? Other than this obviously made sense. So when I read through it, it's like, oh, clearly, yeah, that would,
Yeah, the point is to do no harm to our staff as they
yep,
run through this year with their incentive pay.
yep. So. All right, if there's no further discussion, I will call for a vote. Adita,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Julie is yes, Katie,
Yes.
Grant,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
and Charlie.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimous. Oops. Can I get a motion to approve the January 2021 pay equity report?
So moved.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion or any further questions for Elizabeth? All right, hearing none, we'll call for a vote. Adita,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Julie is yes, Katie,
Yes.
Grant,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
and Charlie.
Yes.
All right, motion carries unanimous. Can I get a motion to approve the additional fundraiser as presented?
So moved.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion? Is this for the school store? Is that what this is?
Yeah, with DECA.
Yeah.
Correct, yes.
Okay, and it's going to be called what was it called? The Jay's Cage or something?
I believe.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Is this one that they usually always do, or is it a new one?
I don't, go ahead, Elizabeth.
Oh, well, that's okay. So they've been continuing to work on the school store, and this is kind of a formality. It's it's more of an organization, but we just wanted to make sure that we were being fully transparent and having them follow the same student activity guidelines as all of our others. So we'll bring this to you next year sooner, and we'll probably just do more of a blanket kind of school store versus individual items, but we did just want to bring it to the board for recognition.
Because I don't believe the school store has it been open yet, or this, so hopefully it'll be open soon. Cool.
It is in process right now.
Awesome, good. All right, any further discussion? All right, hearing none, we'll call for a vote. Adita?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Julie is yes. Katie?
Yes.
Grant?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
And Charlie?
Yes.
All right, motion carries unanimous. Can I get a motion to approve the service agreement with Owatonna Public Schools?
So moved.
Second.
We have a first and a second. Any discussion? All right, hearing none, we'll call for a vote. Adita?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Julie is yes. Katie?
Yes.
Grant?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Charlie?
Yes.
All right, motion carries unanimous. Can I get a motion to approve the reviewed policies as presented? And these did not have any changes, and so they only needed one reading.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a first and a second. And I guess I could say it's policy 414, 415, 506, 514, 524, and 616. All right, any further discussion? All right, hearing none, we'll call for a vote. Adita?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Julie is yes. Katie?
Yes.
Grant?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
And Charlie?
Yes.
All right, motion carries unanimous. All right, that is the end of our action items. Do we have any particular upcoming items and reminders? Our next board work session will be Thursday, February 4th. So we will meet here for the work session, and then we'll, once we're done with we just have a couple items to talk about, and then we'll go probably back to the flex room and do our discussion of the, what is it called again?
The life journey.
Life journey, thank you. So we'll do that like what we did last time. So, so that meeting will probably be a little bit longer again, like what it was last time. So, and then our next regular school board meeting is Thursday, February 18th, and that'll be here, of course. Otherwise, anything else going on? I can't think of anything. So, all right. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, all in favor can just say aye.
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 All right, we are adjourned. Thank you.